بەیانی باش بەڕێز دکتۆر ئالان حەمە سعید وەزیری پەروەردە بەڕێزان ئامادە بوون پێش ئێمە پانێڵی خۆ دەست پێ بکەین حەزم لێیە چەند ڕوونکردنەوە بدەم بەڕێزان ئەم پانێڵە لەسەر بابەتی هەڵسانگاندنی نێودەوڵەتیە و هەروەهاش پرۆگرامە بەڵام دوای ئەو پانێڵێکی دیهەیتی ئەوەش گرنگە وەکو ئەم پانێڵە هیوادارم هەمووتان ئامادە بن لەوێ و دوای نان خواردن هەروەها پانێڵێکی دیهەیتی هەرچی زۆر گرنگە کە سێ بەڕێز بەشدار دەبن دکتۆر تۆنی دکتۆر راندل ئەن دکتۆر کیف هەر سێکیان شەهرەزایەکی زۆر هەیە لە بواری پەروەردە و پێمان خۆشە ئێوە لەو پانێڵەش ئامادە بن هەروەها بەڕێزان لە QR کۆدەکانیت ئێوە جەنابتان دەتوانن هەر ئێستا کاتی ئێمە پانێڵەکە دەست پێ بکەین تیبینی خۆ بنووسن و بە ئەلکترۆنی ئێمە لەسەر شاشە دەبینین و ئەو پرسیارانە دەبینین گرنگە دەخوێنن هیوادارم ئەم پانێڵە سرنجی هەمووتان ڕاکێشت و سوودی لێوەربگرن و زۆر سوپاس ئەو کاتای من قەسە کردی بە کوردی لە پانێڵم حساب نابێت دکتۆر کاوتەر should we start? Yes. Dear attendants and our audience online with us, good morning. We are happy today to be with you concerning a very important subject, which is the international assessment and its impact on curricula. Allow me to introduce my special guest. First of all, we have our guest is online with me, Mr. Andreas Schleicher. Mr. Andreas Schleicher is with us online. I hope that he is online with us. Mr. Andreas Schleicher is a well-known and a famous figure in education. He is the director for Education and Skill, OECD, as well as he has been awarded many famous awards because of his work in education. Dear audience, if you want any further information about our guests, please go to the web for our form, and there you will find enough information about each of our guests. I hope someone answer me. Is Mr. Schleicher with me? Okay. My next guest is Dr. Manios Antonius. He's Director of Global Education Monitoring, GEM. Since 2017, he leads teams in different themes. For example, accountability, migration, leadership, and other important themes in education. As well as he has coordinated the finance gap estimated for 2030 education target, the World Inequality Database on Education, and new methodologies and on out-of-school and complementation rate. And I have my dear Kauthar here with me on the stage, Dr. Kauthar. Dr. Kauthar Saeed Aladdin, she is international baccalaureate developer and recognition manager in Africa, Europe, and Middle East. She has a very important role in including collaboration with government and improving recognition with IB programs. Welcome, Dr. Kauthar, and welcome all my guests. Still, I didn't get a signal that my guests are online. I hope no technical problem happened. So, dear Dr. Kauthar, maybe there is a technical problem. Tell my guests be with me. Let me start with you. In order to save time, we have only 40 minutes, 10 minutes for each speaker, and we have also 10 minutes for our audience. Dear Dr. Kauthar, according to your experience in education, which recommendation you will give to the Ministry of Education concerning participating in international assessment? The floor is yours.
صباح الخير. السلام عليكم. صباح الخير. Good morning, everyone. Well, I think participation in international assessments is very, very important for all the reasons that are mentioned in all the research, but mainly to tell us where we are and where we need to get. And I'm going to tie that to curriculum development. So international assessments like PISA and TIMSS, they give us an indication of what we're covering in relation to the world, right? And how we're doing that. Most importantly, it gives us what we need to develop our curriculum. So the results of the international assessments are important in curriculum development, not because we want our students to do better in the tests, but we want to raise our students' proficiency level. And to do so, when redesigning our curriculum, we need to redesign the curriculum to take into consideration 21st century skills, to take into consideration, yesterday we heard a lot about identity and the sense of belonging. That's very important in education. So to take the students' identity into consideration, character building, skill building. Right? If we teach them, let's take an example. If we teach them 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, that's one way of teaching it. Memorize 1 + 1 = 2. Does anybody have a different answer than 1 + 1 = 2? What if they were asked, Mona came to school with an apple, and so did George, but Ahmed had an orange. How many apples do we have? What do they need to answer that question? The answer is still 2, right? 1 + 1 = 2. 1 apple with Muna, 1 apple with George, and an orange with Ahmed, that doesn't count. The answer is still 2. But they need language. They need to be able to identify and problem solve. They need to be able to think. So a curriculum that focuses, that is this is the result of participating in international assessments. Redesigning the curriculum, a curriculum that enables students to think, to identify, to build resilience, to build perseverance, etc., is a very important one. And that curriculum needs to focus more on, let's say, a little bit more than, not more on, more than disciplinary knowledge. And what do we mean by that? Disciplinary knowledge is the knowledge that is included in all the disciplines, right? Physics is physics, math is math, chemistry is chemistry. But with that problem, the apples, what do students need in addition to mathematical knowledge in order to solve that problem? Oh, I'm not used to panels. I'm used to presentations and engaging the audience. What do students need? They need language, right? If they don't understand the language of the problem, even though they know that 1 + 1 = 2, they will not be able to answer that question. So that interdisciplinary knowledge is very important. How do we get to that? By integrating skills into our curricula. So the short answer to your question would be, yes, I would encourage it very much. I wouldn't allow it to disappoint me if the results were not as I expect, but I will use the results and the analysis of those results to redesign my curriculum to prepare my students for the future for life, a life that includes the job market as well. So maybe also include unconventional disciplines in our curriculum? Are we teaching engineering at schools? Are we teaching entrepreneurship? Do we need to?
So, Dr. Kauthar, I understand that from your speech that you recommend that we give more importance to understanding our own native language before moving to other step, for example, or understanding the other aspect of curriculum. So this is a very important point because already we have done the TIMSS assessment in Kurdistan. One of the problem really we face is that the students' understanding. So I do agree with you. But let me, within your speech, turn to another important point, which is, according to your experience, and you have already mentioned a very important points about this subject. For you as working in a private place, for example, what procedure do you have followed to develop your curricula based on those international assessments, like PISA, TIMSS, and so on?
Okay, the procedure would be, first of all, to see what the research is telling me. So I have the results of the assessments, I have the analysis. What I want is to develop my students' proficiency, not my students' results. That's very important. What
Can
I
you
want
more
is
elaborate this point? It's very important for me. The students' proficiency.
Yeah, because when the student proficiency in certain disciplines improves, that means that their results are going to improve. This is the outcome. But it should not be the goal. The goal is for their proficiency to improve, I need to do 1, 2, 3. And those include probably focusing more on interdisciplinarity in curriculum redesign, not adding to the curriculum. Our curricula, and when I say our, I refer loosely to the Arab world, okay? Our curricula are so packed with a lot of information that students fail to connect to their real lives. And if we have teachers of Arabic in the audience, please excuse me, but when a grade 5 student, and I'm not talking about the region, I'm talking about the bigger region, the Middle East, when a grade 5 student has to learn halat nun al-niswa, seriously? Why do they want to know them? They need to be able to apply it when they write. So simple knowledge, what I'm advocating for is not adding on top of already packed curricula, but to redesign the curriculum to build skills, to focus on character, to drive motivation. Students need to be able to connect what they're learning to their real lives and see those connections. I need to know this because it will help me understand 1, 2, 3 and do 1, 2, 3, 4 and think about the ethics of what I'm doing. Is this moral? Is this ethical? So, for example, this question about the 1 + 1 = 2, I'm going to bore you with it today. But this question, instead of focusing on praising students who get the answer right only, why not ask them, how did you arrive at your response? What did you do? Did you remember that we said 1 + 1 = 2 in class? Did you put 1 + 1, 1, 2, and that's equals 2? Did you put, 4 together and then took away 2 and counted 1 + 1 = 2? Did you ask your mom or your dad? Do you think your solution, how you approached solving the problem, was ethical? When I asked you in class not to ask for help, for example, when you asked your mom, was that ethical? This is all embedded in the curriculum purposefully. And can you think of other ways to solve the problem? What other ways your classmates presented that resonated, that you liked, that you think you're going to deploy? How are you going to approach this in the future? So all of this that is why redesigning the curriculum to include motivation, to include student agency. This is agency. The example that I've just given is agency. What you're going to do, their voice, their choice, and ownership. ownership of what they're doing, what they're learning, how they're going. Help them identify how best to learn individually. Because we all learn differently, right? If I don't write things down, I will never be able to remember what I'm going to say.
So thank you, Dr. Kauthar, but your answer led me to another question. For example, the curricula, when it's designed according to a well-known methodology. For example, it matches the syllabus of that curricula. So sometimes we find that the method of this curricula doesn't match the type of a question have been designed for. So the impact of such cases in the answer when the students are going to answer the questionnaire, the test paper in international assessment, for example, PISA and TIMSS. Have you faced such problem? And for example, in which way or how we can solve this problem?
So let me get this right. What we're referring to is the question types in international assessments. Now, while those are good to expose students to some extent, they should not be the focus. So it's okay to expose them to the type of questions and see how they're going to approach solving those questions, but they should not be our goal. So when we design a curriculum, we don't design a curriculum to match the outcomes of the international test. We design a curriculum to match the learning outcomes that we see in our future children. And that is why I think before exposing them to exam questions, it's good to ask ourselves, what sort of profile do we need of students leaving school in Kurdistan? What do we want our youth to be able to do when they leave school? And it is under those that I can embed anything I want, including exam preparation. But exam preparation should not be the focus. And this is what we advise in the IB as well. We prepare students for life. We have the learner profile. But at the end of the day, they sit for exit exams and they sit for tests in the DP and they go to universities. But still, we do not spend or design the curricula based on the exam questions that we're going to ask them. We design the curricula based on research. We integrate the latest research into curriculum design and rethinking about the curriculum. Is this enough? Is this too much? Is this too little? Is this appropriate, age appropriate? And this is what we normally do. We also involve a lot of people in the curriculum design. Teachers, experts, parents, university professors, business people, a lot of people are involved into the curriculum design. And I'm saying that because simply, I'm not going to say 50 years ago, but 20 years ago, will any of us have ever thought that influencer will be a job? So the word probably existed in language and was not very much used, but now it is a high-paying job. Can we imagine what the job market is going to be like in 20 years' time? We know AI is here, and it is here to stay, by the way. But it is just a very simple form of AI. So it's going to develop exponentially, and we need to be able to figure out ways to leverage that. So in a sense, make AI work for us instead of us being enslaved by AI.
Anyhow, thank you so much, Dr. Kauthar. I think that our guest, Mr. Manos, is with us.
Great.
Mr. Manos, do you hear me, please? I hope that, yes, they told me that Mr. Manos is with us online. I hope that they managed to put either his photo or the online screen for Mr. Manos. Tell Mr. Manos be with us. I'm sorry, Dr. Kauthar, I have already exhausted you with my question. So let me tell you something. One of the things we have faced in international assessment is the children's imagination and their preference or their desire to imagine things and put imaginative answer. For example, we have a very simple question concerning the student's date of birth. So we face a problem in this question. For example, all of them have put an imaginative date of birth. For example, one of those students mentioned one in 1984. So this aspect, this imaginative of children, have you ever faced such problem and what solution you can find for it?
Oh, to be quite honest, first of all, I would untie that from international assessments. So I know it is bothering to find them not being able to put their date of birth. But this is something I would nurture. First of all, I would try to see why they're putting those dates as their dates of birth. There could be very nice stories behind them, and then guide them towards what it means in forms and why here we need factual knowledge, not imaginary answers, and what they can do with their imaginary answers. For example, give them a form and then ask them to write a piece of a story or to narrate a story in which they include their imaginative answers, but teach them the difference between factual knowledge and what they need to do, okay, when they imagine what they need to do with their imagination, but the importance of factual knowledge in certain areas. And this is one of the areas, the date of birth, etc.
Yeah.
It all has to do with how you allow them to inquire inside the classroom. And we are not doing a lot when it comes to inquiry. Inquiry is a very powerful aspect of education, because we all have different entry points, even if we're in pre-K. Some of us, their parents read to them from day one. Some of us did not see a book before they joined school. Some of us know what a pen is. Others have never even written using a pen. So those different entry points, in order to make sure that students remain motivated, in order to make sure that I'm helping them build character, skills, etc., I need to meet them where they are, help them identify where they are, where they want to get to, and how they're going to get there.
So I predict from your speech, Dr. Kauthar, that first of all, if we take the decision to participate in such international assessment, we should take care of the native language, the students' understanding, and those skill and ability should be there in the curriculum. For example, the ability of solving problem, the critical thinking, as well as the aspect of factual think, that to make our students familiar, saying the facts or mention the fact as it is without using the imagination in answering such a question, as well as about the question and the methodology of those questions. All our speech led me to another question which I thought it's important. I have seen many lectures for Dr. Andreas Schleicher. One of those lectures entitled Pizza Story really is an inspiring lecturer, where he mentioned a comparison between those systems who pay teachers very well in a comparison with those systems who cares about the system or the budget of the Ministry of Education other than paying the teachers well. So he, as according to his own explanation, if I didn't understand wrong the lecture, he preferred to pay the teacher well other than to take more importance for the system of education, for example. So if you are familiar with the system of education in Kurdistan region, we have a very good steps, and still we need to prove other aspects of our education. But one of the things, I think, I stop here and we'll go to Mr. Manus. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you so much for patiently waiting for me and Andreas to... I see Andreas is also online. I don't know if you want to start with me.
Happy news. Thank you to be with us. Really,
thank you to
it's
Mrs.
an
Council
honor
for
and privilege to have you.
Holding the panel for us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So tell Mr. Andreas join us. Let me start with asking you. You are a well-known expert in education, and you have a long experience, and really you have done things which are amazing. So we are talking about the international assessment, and I know that to participate for the first time in such international assessment, it's not easy, especially for a region like Kurdistan region. So can you please tell me about the importance of awareness for parents, for example, for the school administration, for teachers, students, before they answer the questionnaire or the test, they will be aware of the importance of such a national or international assessment.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Andreas, I can hear you, please.
Very
Welcome.
good. Unfortunately, your technicians do not activate the
Yes,
video.
that's right.
I do not know why they do not do that, but at least you can hear me. So let me just talk like this.
Yes, fortunately, we can hear you, and it's an honor and privilege to have you, both of you, with us. And sorry if there will be any technical problem instead of our staff. Thank you so much. So, sorry.
First of all, I want to congratulate Kurdistan for joining the PISA assessment. I think this is a very, very important step, and I believe will enable you to see your country and the education performance in an entirely new light. And when it comes to curriculum, one of the things that international assessments can do is to show us what is missing in the curriculum, what is possible in terms of educational achievement. We can look out to countries that are similar in their economic development, similar in their educational aspirations, and see to what extent learning outcomes differ. And sometimes, when we see the performance is not as we would like to see it, it is simply because certain elements in the curriculum may be missing. And in that sense, I think the PISA assessment will provide you with important insights. It will allow you to see your own curriculum in the light of choices that other countries have made. If you take the area of mathematics, some countries place great emphasis on mathematical content knowledge. Other countries place greater emphasis on mathematical competency. Can you not only reproduce mathematical facts and figures, but also think like a mathematician? And these choices are made quite differently across countries, and by applying international assessments, you can see to what extent your own curricular choices align or misalign with the choices made in other countries. And when it comes to, of course, preparing for international assessments, it is important that your teachers, your school leaders understand the nature of the PISA assessment. PISA puts less emphasis on the capacity of students to memorize, to reproduce factual knowledge. Because today, computers can do those kinds of things for us. PISA places greater emphasis on the capacity of students to apply, to use their knowledge. So the kind of tasks that students get are not simply multiple choice tasks, but they're also often problem-solving tasks. Students may see a real-world problem, something that they encounter in their daily life, and they have to understand the mathematics or the science that is involved in solving that problem. So first they have to translate a real-world problem into the world of mathematics, and then they have to use mathematical skills to solve the problem, and at the end they have to translate the results back into the real world and interpret them. So in science, for example, students are not asked to remember the results of a scientific experiment, but they are asked to do that experiment in a virtual laboratory. So I do think it's important for teachers to familiarize students with those kinds of tasks. Sometimes in PISA, it's not just the result that counts, but also the thinking process that students apply to get to those results, which are monitored through our digital assessment. So once again, it is important for teachers to be aware of that and then to familiarize themselves and students with those kinds of concepts and ideas. Fortunately, and I think that's a very good sign, is that, and it says now I can open my camera, let me try again. No, the host has stopped it. Fortunately, the curriculum changes that you envisage in Kurdistan are actually very much in line with the ideas of PISA. So I do believe that PISA will give you a good, check to what extent the curricular intentions are actually being implemented in classrooms and ultimately achieved in terms of student learning outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Andreas. If I ask you another question concerning also the positive...
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Or should I elaborate any aspects?
I thought that you have already done because there were silent period. I'm sorry. Mr. Andreas?
It sounds like we have lost contact with the panel.
Yes.
Yes.
And for some reason, whenever I click my camera, it says the host has stopped your video. But
yes.
I don't know what they have been doing.
So, Mr. Andreas, you are a very famous person, educational person. You have mentioned a very important point concerning the first participation of Kurdistan region.
Okay, they said I should try once more. I'm trying.
So, yeah.
So, finally.
At last. Yes. Mr. Andreas, do you hear me, please? Do you hear me, please?
But we have now lost contact with the panel, so we're not sure if you're asking us to continue.
Can you hear me, please?
Mr. Khurshid?
I hope that the technician solved the problem. Do you hear me, Mr. Andreas, Mr. Manos, please?
I think they need to unmute us. There
Yes.
we go.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So shall I go on asking a few questions?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Mr. Andreas, you have already mentioned the question which I was about to ask you about the role that such international assessment play in improving the education system and in particular curricula. For example, we are facing problem because we in the Kurdistan region, the term or the concept of curricula, we don't have it. We have textbook. So in such case, according to your experience, which role those international assessments will play in this particular point?
Yeah, I think textbooks are actually one way to articulate a curriculum, and having a good textbook and good teacher guides that help teachers interpret the textbooks and teach them well is actually a good way to implement a curriculum. But what PISA can do for you is help you to understand to what extent those intentions of the textbook are actually achieved in terms of student learning outcomes. Sometimes textbooks have certain ambitions, they try to teach certain concepts, but it's only once we make the learning results visible and the processes of student thinking that we can see to what extent the intentions of the textbook is implemented in pedagogical practice by teachers and ultimately achieved in terms of student learning results. We can also see to what extent the textbook or the curriculum may be, learned differently in different parts of Kurdistan. Do students from poorer backgrounds have maybe access to poorer educational resources and therefore achieve poorer results? Do we see differences between boys and girls? Does gender play a role? Does geography play a role? I think those kinds of aspects you cannot see just when you look at the textbook. You can only see when you actually see to what extent the ideas of the textbooks translate into actual learning outcomes. I would still say, just having textbooks, and I know that Kurdistan has actually a great variety of textbooks, alone does not make up for a good curriculum. I would actually think that PISA can help you in the long run to actually think about, a more coherent and system-wide approach to curriculum design and development. It's only when every teacher in Kurdistan knows what the intention is, what the ideas are, what the priorities are in terms of learning outcomes, that you will achieve coherent results. And that is something that, a strong curriculum will help you do that. And once again, you are now part of a very large international community. Kurdistan is part of, over 100 countries that work on PISA. So it allows you actually to see to what extent, your curricular choices, your own priorities, how they align with the choices that have been made in other education systems.
Thank you, Mr. Andreas. I will move to Mr. Manos. Mr. Manos, I have already talked a little bit about the awareness between the community and society, and especially among teachers and school principal and administration. Really, we face this problem with teams. So your advice for us how to deal with this point, how to make the awareness for our staff before answering the questionnaire or the test for the PISA, because we intend to do it in April. So this is a very important point for us.
Thank you, and thank you very much for organizing this panel on the occasion of Kurdistan joining two major international assessments, TIMSS and PISA. I think your question is really relevant in terms of determining the success of this participation, because assessments have the potential to help education systems, but we need to know and be conscious why we're joining them and what we're trying to achieve. And I think Mrs. Kauthar earlier gave an excellent example where she contrasted some of the questions that exist currently in assessment in Kurdistan with the types of questions that are the norm in international assessments. So it's true that many countries are joining these assessments lacking full awareness, and the main interest of the public and of the ministries of education tends to be in examinations. So we need to really understand that understanding better the quality of the education system is done in a much more robust way through an assessment that has set standards, that we try to see whether students are meeting them, rather than through an examination system whose main purpose is to filter students through the system and make sure that the best, in a meritocratic way, go to higher levels of education. Now, why do we need an international assessment? That's a good question. Any country, any jurisdiction can set up a good national assessment. But it is difficult to do that from scratch. It is difficult because countries do not have the capacity to do it properly, and they need to learn from somewhere. It is also difficult to draw robust conclusions just from a national assessment, because a big element is comparison. And you can do comparison in two ways. You can do comparison of progress over time, but that takes a lot of time to observe. Or more easily, you can compare your country with other countries. And that's the fascination that the international assessments bring. So, cross-national assessments are an important first step. But what do countries need to be aware when they join? First, and maybe to differentiate a little bit my answer, what is being assessed, we have to recognize, has already been decided before them. International assessments like TEAMS or like PISA have decades of experience, and when you join a club, you have to play with the rules of the club. That means that some aspects of the curriculum that are of interest to you may not be covered. But that's fine, it's just an important point of being aware what you do. The second is to handle the criticism from the results. If you join, it's quite likely that you join because you have not done it before, and therefore you're likely to be at the lower end of that league table, as they tend to be called. Now, that has to be done, has to be accepted, that it is part of the challenge. We need to educate the public, we need to educate the Ministry of Education that results take a long time to materialize. Our analysis at the Global Education Monitoring Report suggests that countries make very small progress if they do. I mean, rich countries these days actually are going backwards, but even developing education systems make progress at about less than a percentage point per year, much less than that. So you need to be aware that change happens slowly, and often the reasons that determine that progress are happening mostly outside the classroom. The role of the education factors is perhaps not the most important sometimes. And that's also important to communicate. But the most important sign of effectiveness, and I think that's what you are embarking on, is not to help use the assessment only for the day of the results and to compare yourself with another country. That's the fascination of one day, but then that fascination wears down. You need to make sure that you use the results to inform the curriculum and teacher education. And few countries can claim that they have really done that, because that also requires capacity. That requires investment in your own experts, your own national experts, your own ministry experts, to understand what are the lessons to draw from the assessment and build a better national assessment system. And not just at the level of the system of comparing how one country does with another, but also at your school and classroom level. So use that opportunity for that and determine the shape of your national assessment to assess the skills that you want your children to be able to leave the school with. And for that, I think as a last point, you also need to make sure that you train your media. I think it's very important to train your newspapers, your internet media channels to understand the implication. What does it mean? Because building an assessment and making sure that the lessons of this assessment are put to good use takes time. And you don't want to deflate the enthusiasm of that participation, which is very important for the Kurdistan region of Iraq, to suddenly disappear. I think the government is to be praised for taking the decision to join these two assessments. It's a very important step, but make sure you prepare yourself for the long run. I think that's a key message that I would like to share with you.
Thank you. Let me return back to Mr. Andreas. My last question will be, because we lost many of our time in technical problem, we hope that we get a bit more benefit from your time and your experience. But my last question is for Mr. Andreas. Mr. Andreas, I have already known that no more paper-based assessment will be acceptable, and all those international assessment will be moved to computer-based assessment. So your recommendation for Kurdistan region or the Ministry of Education in Kurdistan region, in case we participated in a computer-based assessment, especially concerning practically the point of textbook and curricula. Thank you so much.
Yeah, indeed. And let me maybe explain why we moved to, or have moved to computer-based assessment in PISA. It's not just because it's a more efficient and timely data collection method, but most importantly, because computers allow us to assess skills that are very, very hard to assess on paper and pencil. For example, can students in Kurdistan think creatively? It's not something that we can assess with pen and pencil, but we can assess that in a computer-based environment. Can students in Kurdistan solve complex problems, real-life problems? Once again, it's very hard to assess this in a pencil and paper format, very easy to do in a kind of digital learning environment. So we have made that move mainly because the nature of the PISA assessment really warrants that we can assess material in digitized form. Last but not least, we are increasingly interested in PISA to provide meaningful feedback for educators. And you know, if as a teacher you just see a student got the answer right or the student got the answer wrong, that's not so instructive. But if you as a teacher can understand what kind of thinking processes the student has gone through, you know, did the student adopt a goal-directed approach to solving a problem or simply, you know, recall an answer? That's something that we can assess in digital form. And that's why we would encourage Kurdistan to make that step as soon as possible. In 25, you can still use a paper format, but from 29 on, it will be only the digital format. And in that sense, I think the transition will be important. But I would also encourage Kurdistan to do that nationally, because once again, the digital format gives you so many more possibilities to individualize, to personalize learning and also assessment. For example, if you have one paper-based exam or assessment that you give to every student, for students with high abilities, it's very boring. For students with low abilities, it's very frustrating. They can't answer any of those questions. Now the computer allows you, and the PISA allows you to personalize the learning assessment. And that, I think, is a huge possibility that you should realize also in your country for the national assessment and even, you know, for regular teaching and learning. I know there are still issues around infrastructure, but in PISA we are supporting countries. Sometimes it requires, you know, the assessors to go with specialized prepared laptops to the countries, to the classrooms, but we strongly encourage you to pursue that digitized track simply because it allows you in a much broader sense to realize the ambitions of your curriculum.
Thank you so much. My last question for Mr. Manos. Dear Mr. Manos, I have already from your CV, although I will go out of the subject of our panel, allow me, because I get the opportunity. Oh, I think that I have lost my, yes. Anyhow, it was interesting to have such well-known educational figure with us, like Mr. Andreas Schleicher and Mr. Manos. I think that we have 2 or 3 minutes for our audience question. If there is any question we are able to answer, me and Dr. Kauthar, we will be happy to answer them. If not, we have to finish this panel, and I hope that we have, you get benefit from our discussion. So I don't know if the question will be electronically on the screen or I should pick up those who are raising their hand. So Mr. Dr. Ismail Ali, please. Thank you. Someone give the microphone, please, for Dr. Ismail.
Hello.
I think we lost our guesses, so either you have to accept my opinion or Dr.
Hello?
Kaufer's opinion.
Hello.
Yeah, hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Dr. Andreas, are you with us still? Dr. Ismail, please.
Yeah, of course. I'm Dr. Ismail, tech education specialist from University of Zaho. So I have a big issue actually I'm just fighting with every day because I have kids going to school and I teach college students. So the problem I have that we have some skills that missing from the curriculum, which are leadership, negotiation, emotional intelligence, and finance. So we teach the kids how to spend money, but not how to handle it, how to save it. We teach them how. Yeah, we teach them how to. We do not teach them how to manage their feelings. For example, they fail in exam, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
How to express their feelings.
Yes, thank you, Dr.
And,
Ismail. Because
yeah.
of time, can I return to Mr. Manos, if you
so
allow me and
if Dr.
excuse me?
Kaffer can answer that question
Yes,
about how
yeah.
to integrate.
So, Mr. Manos, have you heard the question? Can you please?
No, I didn't hear the question, unfortunately.
He was, I think, as I heard him, because I also have a problem in hearing, he was asking about how we can teach leadership,
Right.
I think,
Yes, sure.
techniques, criticism, all other those skills for our children, according to your own experience.
So this is a very important question, and I think partly I answered that question earlier when I said, when you join an international assessment, you recognize that you join a club that has already decided what it cares for and what it wants to assess. Assessments have evolved a lot. They started from fairly basic skills, which they still include in their assessment. But PISA, you heard a number of experimentations over time. Now, many of these experimentations remain just that, experimentations. They don't remain permanent features of the assessment because they are costly, because they make the assessment very complicated, but they're just attempts to put the education systems to think more what they care for and how they can approach these skills and how they can be assessed. We cannot, it's very difficult to, and maybe not even desirable, to have assessment of all those skills. The important thing, and I will insist and I will come back to this point as a lesson for Kurdistan. You have joined 2 international assessments. I understand that the most interest will be to see how you compare with your neighbors, how you compare with countries in Europe or in Asia. This is very interesting. But what you should claim a medal for, and I'm talking from Paris, where medals are being allocated for the Olympic Games, your medal should be decided on the basis of how you have used the lessons, the expertise that your people are accumulating by being part of the process to improve your education system.
Thank you, Mr. Manos.
How you make sure that these skills are really becoming a part of your system, and you can then, on your own, introduce for your own national assessment purposes skills like leadership, like financial management, like social emotional. This is the key objective you should aim to achieve.
Yes.
How to learn how to do it.
Really, your last question statement is a big lesson for us. This is the essence of participating, especially for a region like us. Just allow me to take one further question, although I'm preceding the time which was allocated for us. So please allow us to do that. Yes, please, my dear sir.
Thank you. Hello, thank you. I am Fazil Shoro, education expert from COE. I have 2 points to speak about. First, to Ms. Kauthar, I have understood She mentioned that students' national identity should be taken into consideration in curriculum. For me as a teacher, can you tell me how can I apply this? The second point is a suggestion. We are so sorry that there is some technical problem in the connection. I suggest, even in Suleimani we had the same problem. I suggest, first of all, the staff should record the item before in advance. In the case if there is any problem, you can display and play the record that you have. And this helps you to make the translation easier. And the last point, we don't know when our guests are speaking. I think it is better to mention the town and the country, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Good recommendation. Dear Dr. Kauthar.
Thank you. Well, identity and national identity is very important, but identity is more than just national identity. National identity is part of it. My own identity as a person, what I like, what I do not like, what I'm going to do, how this, something that is of interest to me. Okay, national identity can be integrated and discreetly, not necessarily sometimes in an obvious manner or explicitly, into everything, into languages, not only history, into languages, into social sciences, even into math and sciences, what the region has done, etc., etc. In the past, where we come from, what sort of sciences, when we teach them the old sciences, and this is how, not only history, but this is a combination of history, art, and science. Okay, so we can embed that, and at the same time, by seeing their eyes sort of become, how am I going to put that? The glimpses in their eyes and their interest in something. So do we all enjoy reading Shakespeare? Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
If you say yes, I will know for a fact
Yes, thank you.
that is not true. But some do. Do we all enjoy physics? Absolutely not, but some do. And by allowing students to explore further, to do research, to do projects, to delve into something that they're really interested in, for example, financial education, and how that financial education is connected to the economy in the region. And whether it's better to go, for example, to Baghdad to buy something that is 10,000 dinars cheaper than it is in Kurdistan, financially that is not sound, right? Because I still have to pay for my transportation, I have to pay for my lost time, I have to pay for X and Y and Z. That's the identity that we're talking about on a much larger scale than just national identity.
Thank you, Dr. Kauthar. Mr. Manos, I will end up with your location because they asked for where are you talking from, please.
I think I just revealed because I said I was talking about Olympic Games and medals. The Global Education Monitoring Report is an editorially independent report hosted and published by UNESCO, whose headquarters is in Paris. And allow me to say a good word because I also participated last year.
Yeah.
And I can see the amazing effort that has been put to organize and improve. I think it's a much more impressive setup this year. So well done to the organizers, and the technical problems are always there. The important thing is to have the will to improve, and I think it's clear from the investment you've made that there is a lot of interest in education in Kurdistan. And
at the end of this panel, I don't know how to express my gratitude for all of my guests, especially those who have been online because they face technical problems. Dear Mr. Manos, dear Mr. Andreas, as well as our dearest Dr. Kauthar. Thank you so much for being with us. It was really a privilege and honor to have you for the second time with us. Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience and also for those attendance who be patient with us for ending this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a true privilege.